The morning show audience expected another smooth, cheerful broadcast when country superstar Blake Shelton sat down with Michael Strahan on Good Morning America. Cameras rolled, lights shined brightly, and the studio buzzed with anticipation. Blake, usually relaxed and witty, appeared slightly tense even before the first question was asked. Strahan leaned in with his signature smile, trying to set a welcoming tone. But viewers quickly noticed Shelton's body language was stiff, his eyes narrowing slightly. Something felt off, as though underlying tension hovered in the air, waiting to spark. What was supposed to be a routine segment promoting new music quickly shifted gears. Shelton's responses began carrying sharp edges, his voice rising with uncharacteristic intensity. Audiences at home leaned forward, captivated and uneasy, unsure what would unfold next. Michael Strahan, known for his calm presence and ability to handle live TV surprises, asked about Shelton's recent life changes and new projects. The question seemed harmless, but Blake's reaction suggested otherwise. Instead of laughing it off, he clenched his jaw and leaned closer to the mic. His voice dropped lower, full of irritation. He questioned why the show always framed his personal life before focusing on his music, hinting that producers were more interested in gossip than artistry. Strahan tried to redirect, but Blake interrupted, raising his hand. The studio audience let out nervous chuckles, thinking it was part of a playful exchange. Yet the tension only thickened. Strahan's eyebrows lifted in genuine surprise as Shelton's words gained volume, echoing through the studio. For years, Shelton had carried the reputation of being approachable and humorous. He thrived on witty banter, especially on The Voice. But this time, the humor was gone. His frustration simmered as he pointed out that countless interviews had reduced him to talking points about his marriage and television appearances instead of his craft as a musician. Michael Strahan, still composed, attempted to reassure him that viewers were excited about his music too. However, Shelton wasn't satisfied. His voice cracked with intensity, and his tone sharpened further. Crew members exchanged worried looks from behind the cameras. The teleprompter operator hesitated, unsure whether to advance or pause, sensing the show had veered far off script. The unexpected confrontation drew audible gasps from the crowd when Shelton leaned forward and jabbed a finger in the air, emphasizing each word. He accused the network of focusing on spectacle rather than substance, saying that artists poured their lives into their songs, only to have interviews diluted by tabloid-style questions. Strahan, seasoned and professional, tried to diffuse the tension with a chuckle, but his eyes revealed genuine concern. His calm demeanor clashed sharply against Shelton's stormy presence. Fans watching from home immediately took to social media, tweeting about the uncomfortable exchange in real time. Clips were quickly cut and shared, magnifying the intensity of what was happening live on national television. By the fifth minute of the segment, it was clear things were spiraling. Shelton's words came in bursts, like waves crashing without pause. Strahan inserted small comments, but they were drowned out by Shelton's passion. The crew considered cutting to commercial, but producers hesitated. After all, live television thrives on unpredictability. Ratings spikes often come from controversial moments, and this was exactly the kind of explosive drama networks secretly crave. Still, the tension bordered on chaotic. Strahan straightened his posture, speaking firmly now, telling Shelton that the show had always respected artists. Shelton countered immediately, raising his voice louder. The clash between them no longer felt like a misunderstanding. It had grown into a head-on collision. Social media trends ignited almost instantly. Hashtags like #BlakeAngba and #StrahanShowdown began rising within minutes. Viewers debated fiercely, some siding with Shelton for standing up against shallow questions, while others criticized him for disrespecting Strahan, who had built a reputation as a fair interviewer. Meanwhile, in the studio, tension became palpable. Audience members sat frozen, unsure whether to clap, laugh, or stay silent. Shelton's face flushed with emotion, his normally easygoing smile replaced with tight lips and furrowed brows. Strahan held steady, speaking more assertively now, his tone shifting from friendly to firm. It was no longer just an interview, it was a test of wills, each man determined not to back down. Shelton slammed his hand lightly on the armrest, punctuating his words. "I'm not here to be your headline," he said, voice echoing. Strahan, unfazed, responded that headlines were inevitable when stars of Shelton's caliber appeared on national television. That remark only fueled the fire. Shelton shot back that he was tired of being treated as a celebrity first and a musician second. The crowd reacted with uneasy murmurs, the weight of the conflict settling in. Crew members signaled frantically, suggesting producers finally cut to a break. But producers, sensing the moment's gravity, allowed the scene to continue rolling live, knowing millions were glued to their screens. As the tension mounted, Michael Strahan attempted once more to steer the discussion back to music. He asked Shelton about his latest album, hoping to shift the energy. But Blake wasn't ready to let go. His voice, firm and unwavering, cut through the studio. He insisted that it wasn't enough to just plug a record in passing. Real conversation about artistry was missing. He wanted to talk about songwriting, late nights in the studio, the struggle to stay authentic in a commercial industry. His tone revealed both anger and vulnerability, leaving viewers torn between admiration and discomfort. Strahan nodded slowly, clearly recognizing that Blake wasn't simply lashing out but demanding respect for his craft. Still, the live setting gave little room for depth, and the clash hung unresolved. The cameras zoomed in, capturing Shelton's flushed cheeks and piercing glare. His frustration turned into a monologue that seemed to swallow the entire segment. He spoke of countless interviews where questions about his marriage overshadowed discussions of his music. "It's like I don't exist without being half of a headline," he said bitterly. The audience remained quiet, processing the weight of his words. Strahan finally interjected, gently acknowledging that personal lives often fascinated viewers, but he agreed that Shelton's artistry deserved the spotlight too. For a moment, it seemed like tension might break, but Blake's arms crossed tightly over his chest, signaling that his guard remained high. Behind the cameras, producers debated furiously through headsets. Some wanted to pull the plug on the segment before Shelton crossed an irreparable line. Others argued this was precisely what made live TV riveting, urging the show to let the moment play out. Meanwhile, Strahan leaned forward, lowering his voice, almost daring Shelton to meet him halfway. His calm words were designed to ease the storm, but Shelton's eyes still burned with passion. He explained how years of being on The Voice made people forget he was first and foremost a country singer with roots, grit, and stories carved into every lyric. It was less a rant now and more an emotional plea, raw and unpolished, leaving the room buzzing with unspoken tension. The studio audience began shifting uncomfortably in their seats, some whispering nervously while others leaned in, enthralled. Shelton, noticing the silence, pressed it harder. He declared that artists shouldn't have to fight so hard to be heard on their own terms. Strahan exhaled deeply, nodding with respect but also firm in his role as host. He reminded Shelton that millions were watching and that his platform was powerful. "You've got them listening right now," Strahan said softly. That comment struck a chord. Shelton paused for the first time, blinking as though realizing the enormity of his words. The fire dimmed slightly in his eyes, replaced with contemplation, though the air was still heavy with tension. Just as the energy seemed to cool, Strahan posed a direct challenge. "So tell them, Blake. Tell America why this album matters." The invitation was bold, shifting responsibility squarely onto Shelton's shoulders. For a brief second, silence stretched awkwardly across the studio. Then Shelton leaned forward, his voice calmer but still charged with intensity. He spoke about late nights of writing, about drawing inspiration from heartbreak, redemption, and rural roots. His words finally carried the weight of artistry rather than anger. The audience softened, nodding, some even clapping lightly. Strahan seized the moment, offering encouraging gestures, but the underlying edge of confrontation still lingered, reminding everyone how close the interview had come to derailing. By this point, social media was ablaze. Clips of Shelton pointing his finger at Strahan were already trending across platforms, dissected in real time by commentators and fans. Memes sprouted instantly, some mocking the fiery exchange, others defending Shelton as an artist standing up for his integrity. The show's live feed continued seamlessly, but online chatter told another story: divided, passionate, and relentless. In the studio, Strahan adjusted his tie, composed as ever, while Shelton finally seemed to release some of the tension coiled in his posture. He began gesturing less aggressively, his voice steadier. It was as if the storm had broken, leaving a raw honesty in its place. Even so, the energy of confrontation had not fully disappeared. Shelton, now calmer, made one last point, saying that he hoped the moment would spark a larger conversation in the industry. "We need more space for real talk about the music," he insisted, eyes softening but still resolute. Strahan, ever the diplomat, agreed wholeheartedly, commending Shelton for his honest "yeah" even if it came in a fiery package. The studio audience clapped, unsure whether to applaud for the sentiment or the fact that the clash had finally reached a fragile truce. Still, producers knew the damage, or perhaps the opportunity was already done. This segment would be replayed and debated endlessly in the days to come. As the cameras continued rolling, Strahan leaned back slightly, exhaling as though signaling a release of tension. Shelton glanced at him, then at the audience, visibly calming. His shoulders, once rigid, dropped a little. Yet, his earlier words still echoed in the studio, heavy and unshakable. Strahan attempted a light-hearted transition, joking that Shelton had just given the producers enough material for a week of headlines. The crowd chuckled, breaking the ice slightly, but Shelton didn't fully smile. He simply nodded, acknowledging the truth in the comment. It was clear he wasn't entirely satisfied, but he also seemed aware that his outburst had already become a moment too big to ignore. In a surprising twist, Shelton redirected the conversation himself. He began speaking passionately about the songs on his new album, describing them with the raw honesty that contrasted with his earlier frustration. His voice, while calmer, carried emotional weight. He shared a story about writing late at night with only his guitar and a notebook, emphasizing how those moments gave life to his most meaningful work. The audience leaned in, sensing a genuine connection. For the first time in the interview, people began clapping without hesitation. Strahan nodded in agreement, subtly guiding Shelton towards safer territory while still honoring his unfiltered truth. Meanwhile, back in the control room, producers debated how the segment would be packaged for replay later in the day. Some suggested trimming the most explosive parts to soften the blow, while others insisted on airing the full exchange to capture the raw drama. After all, authenticity, even if messy, often drives ratings. On set, Shelton seemed more composed, but his earlier fire had left its mark. Strahan, aware of the fragile truce, continued to balance empathy with professionalism. He avoided jokes that might trigger another reaction, instead opting for thoughtful, open-ended questions. It was a delicate dance, but one Strahan had mastered across his career. Shelton, perhaps recognizing the damage of his heated words, took a moment to express gratitude. He thanked fans for sticking by him, especially those who valued his music beyond the tabloid headlines. His tone softened, carrying vulnerability. The audience responded warmly, offering supportive applause. For a brief moment, the tension lifted completely, replaced by a sense of connection between artist and crowd. Strahan capitalized on this by encouraging Shelton to share the inspiration behind a specific track. Shelton obliged, weaving a heartfelt story about love, loss, and resilience. The narrative captivated the room, proving once again that when he focused on music, Shelton commanded attention like few others. Yet, even as the conversation stabilized, the memory of the confrontation lingered. Audience members would later describe the segment as unforgettable, not just because of the music but because of the raw honesty Shelton displayed. The country star had pulled back the curtain, revealing the frustrations of an artist in a world dominated by celebrity culture. Strahan, though composed, had been caught in the crossfire of that honesty, handling it with measured grace. The clash, though uncomfortable, carried a strange authenticity that polished interviews rarely deliver. It was messy, human, and undeniably real. By the time producers finally cut to commercial break, the studio erupted into hushed chatter. Audience members whispered about what they had just witnessed, some still wide-eyed with disbelief. Shelton leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply, as if releasing the last of his anger. Strahan gave him a respectful nod, no grudge evident, only professionalism. Crew members rushed forward with water, dabbing sweat off foreheads and adjusting microphones. The tension had subsided, but the weight of the moment was undeniable. Everyone in the studio knew they had just been part of a broadcast that would be replayed, dissected, and remembered for years. During the break, Insiders later revealed, Shelton admitted to Strahan that his frustration had been building for months. He explained how it felt to be constantly boxed into narratives he didn't control. Strahan, ever empathetic, listened closely, reassuring him that honest "yeah, even when messy" often resonates most with viewers. The two shared a brief laugh, diffusing the lingering edge between them. But outside the studio walls, the storm was only just beginning. Clips of the confrontation spread rapidly online, with headlines popping up on entertainment sites within minutes. The narrative had already escaped their control, becoming a viral story fueled by both shock and fascination. When the broadcast returned from commercial, both the men presented calmer versions of themselves. Strahan reintroduced Shelton warmly, thanking him for his honesty and passion. Shelton smiled faintly, though his eyes still carried traces of the earlier storm. He launched into a more traditional interview rhythm, speaking about tour dates, favorite venues, and the excitement of reconnecting with fans after time away. The studio audience, relieved by the shift, clapped enthusiastically. Yet for many viewers, the earlier fireworks overshadowed this calmer tone. The damage and the intrigue was already cemented, ensuring that this episode of Good Morning America would stand out from countless others. The balance of the segment carried an uneasy peace. Shelton remained articulate and passionate, but he avoided the pointed intensity that had dominated earlier. Strahan, skilled at reading the room, gave him space to share unfiltered thoughts while carefully guiding the flow to prevent another eruption. The audience responded with support, offering applause at key moments. But social media, still buzzing, cared little for the calmer half. Viral clips of Shelton raising his finger, his voice booming across the studio, were already spreading across multiple platforms, detached from the context of reconciliation. In the digital world, the confrontation was all that mattered. Backstage after the show, tension lingered. Shelton, exhausted, reportedly sat in silence for several minutes before addressing staff. He admitted he might have gone too far but insisted his words came from genuine frustration. Crew members nodded, understanding the pressures of fame. Strahan, meanwhile, carried himself with his usual professionalism, brushing off questions about the clash from insiders. "That's live TV," he reportedly said with a grin, though his eyes revealed the weight of the morning. Both the men knew the segment would dominate headlines for days, shaping narratives far beyond the walls of the studio. By midday, entertainment outlets had already seized the story. Headlines screamed of Shelton's meltdown, while others framed it as a powerful stand for artistic integrity. Fans flocked to social media to debate, some praising him for speaking out, others criticizing his approach as disrespectful to Strahan. The polarized reactions only amplified the story, ensuring it would remain in circulation longer than most celebrity interviews. What began as a routine promotional spot had transformed into a cultural flashpoint, sparking conversations about fame, artistry, and media responsibility. Shelton himself broke his silence later that afternoon, posting a short message online. Without directly addressing the incident, he thanked fans for their support and emphasized the importance of music in his life. The carefully crafted statement avoided fueling the fire further, but it wasn't enough to calm speculation. Commentators dissected his every word, interpreting silence as strategy and passion as potential conflict brewing beneath the surface. The internet thrives on ambiguity, and Shelton's measured tone left plenty of room for theories. Meanwhile, clips of the live confrontation continued climbing the trending charts. Strahan, in contrast, chose not to post about the incident. His silence spoke volumes, demonstrating professionalism but also inviting admiration from viewers who praised his composure under pressure. Colleagues in the industry applauded his handling of the live clash, noting that few hosts could maintain such poise in the face of an unexpected outburst. His reputation, already strong, only grew more respected. Meanwhile, debates raged online, with fans demanding to know whether ABC would issue an official statement. Insiders hinted the network welcomed the publicity, quietly enjoying the spike in attention the segment had generated. In the days that followed, the confrontation evolved into a larger conversation across entertainment circles. Talk shows and podcasts replayed the clip, analyzing Shelton's tone, body language, and words. Some framed it as a necessary wake-up call for media outlets to respect artistry over celebrity gossip. Others dismissed it as an avoidable overreaction that risked overshadowing Shelton's own music. Ironically, the very thing he had railed against, the headlines about drama rather than music, was now defining the moment. Yet many argued it gave Shelton a more authentic image, showing fans he wasn't afraid to speak his truth. Industry insiders also chimed in, pointing out that confrontations between artists and media were nothing new, but rarely did they unfold so raw and unfiltered on live television. This gave Shelton's outbursts a unique resonance. Country music fans debated whether the moment would damage or elevate his standing in the genre. Some believed it painted him as hot-headed, while others argued it proved his sincerity and commitment to artistry. For Strahan, the incident showcased his ability to remain unshaken, further cementing his credibility as a trusted broadcaster. Both men, in different ways, had their reputations reshaped by the encounter. In the end, the Good Morning America confrontation became more than a viral clip-up. It became a snapshot of the ongoing struggle between artistry and celebrity culture. Shelton's fiery words, though controversial, highlighted a truth many artists feel but rarely voice so openly on such a platform. Strahan's steady professionalism provided the necessary balance, ensuring the show didn't implode under the weight of the moment. The segment may have begun as just another morning interview, but it concluding as a cultural event, dissected, debated, and remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. For Shelton, it was a gamble that risked his public image, but for millions watching, it was a reminder of the raw, unpredictable humanity that still makes live television unforgettable.